and it was touch and go. I was gonna throw the book. Michelle from Michelle Loves Books. Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a spoilery review, House of Earth and Blood, which is the first book in a new adult fantasy series by Sarah J. Maas called Crescent City. This is actually her first adult fantasy series, so that's kind of cool. I'm just going to set it back here while we talk. So this is about a half human, half fake young woman. I think she's maybe around 25 or so, yeah, early to mid 20s, and her name is Bryce Quinlan. We start this book where she is still mourning the loss of her best friend and her friends. She gets the opportunity to team up with an angel named Hunt to investigate the murder, and they also find out that it's part of a much bigger plot. So now I better just tell you to be on the careful side and tell you now that this is going to have spoilers. I just really wanted to gush about all my favorite characters, all my favorite parts, all my burning questions, and theorize what I think might be going on and what's going to happen in the next book. So if you haven't read this, you might want to come back after you've read it. This book was absolutely so good. It did take a while to get into it. There was a moment around 100 pages in or so, and I was like, am I ever gonna get the hang of this writing style, of this world? Like, I feel really lost, I feel really confused, but it does come together. It just takes some time, but it's worth it. Sarah J. Maas starts to set up this very vast world. It is very complex. There's loads of characters that kind of get dumped on you. I honestly feel like I just got thrown into the center of this new city, and I'm like in the middle of the story, sort of. So I kind of felt like I was scrambling around to kind of like connect characters and remember them. Now there is, try not to mess up my book while I'm doing this or drop it, because this is such a beautiful book, but there is this beautiful, I want to get it all in there. There is this beautiful map they provide in the front of the book. And I honestly, I always have a hard time knowing how to pronounce this. So Lunathian? I'm not really sure. It's very difficult to pronounce, but I don't know if that is supposed to be like the country or what, and then like this circle is like Crescent City. In a minute I'm going to mention the gates a little bit, but before I let this map go, there's these gates here on the map, and also it's important to note the shape of the roads that they make. So I thought that just the design of this city is so interesting. I really found myself referring to that map all throughout this book to kind of get my bearings on what they were talking about. So I was just thinking that if you were going to attempt to read this book through audiobook as a first read through, you are at the disadvantage of not having that reference map. It might not be a big deal for other people, but I personally found that it was invaluable. And this is really the first time I've really felt that a map was essential to making the story make sense to me a little bit more. So just my opinion. One thing I really liked immediately going into this book was how all the different species of characters were just blended into the city. There's still a division, but it's just really different. If you were to compare it to A Court of Thorns and Roses, there's all these species that share the country, but our leading characters are the most beautiful high fae that look mostly like humans. But as the species get to look less and less like humans, they are lower and lower on the list, you know? So they commingle sort of, but the classes are extremely segregated. But here in Crescent City, there are still the classes that are extremely segregated, like the angels, but the average citizens really commingle. They are friends, they are co-workers, they're roommates, and they're just more equal, which I really loved. We also have a very diverse group of different species that we get to see. I mean, you have for fantasy writers, you have such an opportunity to add all different kinds of special creatures, and they kind of primarily focus on fae and maybe add a couple extra side characters or villains that are different species but like one of her best friends has like fawn legs, and she was roommates with a werewolf, mostly friends with all the werewolves. There's a fire sprite, there's mermaids, and they're all of these characters are pretty important. They have a voice. They're not just there. And so I really like that. When it comes to the segregation in this book, it tends to be more of a product of the politics versus the species. So first off, one of the characters, Hunt. I think it was pretty obvious from the get-go he was going to be our love interest, and this was going to be a whole hate to love romance. Not necessarily hate to love. She doesn't hate him. She just, you know, it's kind of like a funny standoff. I really thought it was hilarious how she like made him wait outside of her apartment in the rain and everything, like for quite a long time before they kind of actually started to warm up towards each other and like make friends, or at least make a truce. They also have the most hilarious banter, and I have to love a good comedic relief. So as the romance started and like sparks are flying, I honestly really didn't care for it. I was like not into Hunt as the romantic interest, because you could tell they're kind of like moving into like falling for each other. But the whole relationship started, it just feels like because they were conveniently tossed together, they're both have baggage and they're lonely, and they just happen to kind of have fun together. But then it's like, okay, they kind of start taking their time to get to know each other. However, no wait, just kidding. So she starts to feel like she's got feelings for him, but also she realizes that it's been some time since she's had sex, and like maybe that's where her intrigue and interest is coming from. So I really liked that conversation, because it's like, just because you feel like something about a person does not mean you're falling in love with them. It could just mean you just need to get some. So I really liked that, because it kind of took this it definitely makes it more real. Bryce always gave him such a hard time over everything. And throughout this whole thing, I really, like, even though they were getting to know each other and it was cute, I still just did not have all the feels for this pairing until the ending. And then I just didn't care. I was just so thrown by the whole story and that ending, and I was like rooting for Hunt by the end. But I think that it's more out of my love for Bryce, because she's a really cool character. And I love how much growth she goes through in those last few like pages. I think Hunt has too much baggage, and he's really got the shitty end of the stick as being a slave and basically stuck in the position that he's stuck in. And it just really seems like there's no way out for him, because even if the person who has him, what is that word? Oh my god. Even the person who like owns him, or has him oppressed. I was looking for a more smart word, but we're just gonna say owns him. Even if that person dies, it just defaults to the next person, and like there's no way out for him. I guess it could continue to default infinitely. So that sucks. I kind of have a feeling that Sarah J. Maas is going to do us like she did in A Court of Thorns and Roses, with the whole Tamlin and Rysand thing, and give us a new and better love interest to swoon over. And like, I just have a very strong feeling about that. So we'll see. Also, I'm sure that many people, like myself, were expecting some serious sexy scenes, because the ones in A Court of Thorns and Roses series are pretty steamy, and that's not even supposed to be a solid adult fantasy, so we were expecting a lot out of this book, I think, in that department. And I was like, what the hell? Any day now, like, when are they gonna get it on? Like, that's why we're all still here. But no, there was a lot of foreplay though, so there's that. So I'm sure in the next book we'll get to it. And I really feel like she did that to us on purpose. What do you say? Bryce, I really, really like Bryce as a character. I really loved Feyre too, actually, and she had some really epic moments, but Bryce already is like cooler than Feyre. Despite her anger and sorrow about her friends, it's not a constant burden for the reader to have to live through as well. Like when she did it in A Court of Mist and Fury, Feyre, it was like so overkill almost. Very, very overly dramatic in my opinion, and I got really bored with it. And it was just like, it just kept going and going and going. She didn't do that with Bryce. Our characters need to have grief and depression and a range of emotions to make them real and believable. But I see a really nice balance here with Bryce's emotions, where her anger bubbles up if it's provoked, versus existing in every single moment. It was a breath of fresh air for a character to have this quality. Thank you, Sarah J. Maas. In regards to the world, maybe someone can help me with this, because as I gather, this is a futuristic society. I really liked that they had regular things like cell phones and television. There was a teeny tiny mention of another planet, like the angels came from another planet or something. It was something to that effect. Did anyone else pick up on that? And I would really like to know, because it was just kind of brushed over and then we moved on back into the plot. And also the gates. We sort of briefly talk about a couple of them, but there's at least 5 gates. We talk about one of the gates that is for the angels, and there's one for the fae, and then wasn't there another one for like the undead or something? It was something like that. I find it very fascinating. I'm sure we will get more into that in the next book, but like I'm wondering if this is like planets and things like that, that these are maybe like teleportation gates that take you to your world. That's just kind of maybe what I'm getting from this. What do you guys make of it? I just cannot wait. I have these burning questions about the world. So moving on to what we have learned about her father, who is the king, her biological father, which by the way, that was really cool. And I really liked the lead up to that reveal and like the whole reason behind it, because she's not full fae. I also really liked her relationship with her brother and like how much he watches out for her. It's really sweet. And I also really enjoy the fact that our prince is really humble. He has to be driven and everything for the sake of his dad, his future position. But I feel like deep down, it's not what he would have chose for his life, but how often do we always choose things like that? And especially when it comes to his sister, like he would do anything for her, and I really like that. So we are led to believe that the king wants absolutely nothing to do with her. When she came to his doorstep and talked to him, like I guess he accepted her, but then like she went to the oracle and was delivered some kind of news. And throughout the whole book, we don't know what that is until the very end. And it was a really great lead up. Even better was the news the whole time is that she is the starborn child versus her brother, which I guess. So the whole thing, I know we're gonna get more into that in the next book. The whole thing about that is they were protecting her because she's half fae, so maybe someone would kill her because she's not like legitimate, or they're afraid that her brother would kill her. But like, I think that we all know he wouldn't hurt her. Oh, and then her reasoning is because she gets to know her brother and they're friends and everything like that. But her whole reasoning was that she didn't want to take that away from him because she didn't want anything to do with it. It's not her fault that she was born with this power, and like she loves her brother even though they had a falling out. She doesn't want to take that away from him. And she doesn't even want to be a part of it. Like she hates her father and everything that he stands for. I loved that reasoning. It's really solid. It's not lame, you know? But I feel like there's a lot more to it. I think there's a lot more to the king side of the story. Maybe he's not as cold as we think. I think that would be an interesting spin on it. I don't know. But he did seem really stressed out there towards the end. Like he didn't let it show, but I kind of feel like there might be something there. It might be a little bit of foreshadowing, or maybe I'm just hopeful. I don't know. Another person we get to meet who I think is a very interesting character is Jessica. And she is Bryce's boss. That's how we meet her in the beginning, and then as the story goes, she's an interesting character, and I think she's a hell of a lot more significant than we know. Her boss is always writing her and threatening her that she's gonna turn her into an animal or something. And at first, when we first kind of get to know her a little bit, first kind of introduced, there's like a fear about it, like you do not want to cross her. Each infraction that Bryce does, she's always going against what Jessica wants. Jessica's threats are becoming like less and less frightening. Again, in the last portion of the book, we discover that Jessica has been hiding this magical library. We learned that Jessica has been hiding and guarding this ancient, long lost magical library. And there was something, I can't remember what it was just a thing that made me think that maybe Jessica is protecting Bryce and has been like this whole time. Now, it also seems that Bryce maybe knew this treasure that the library was. Bryce is pretty mysterious and she doesn't always say everything that she's thinking or, flaunt what she knows or share her plans. She just does what she does. And she's very clever. So I believe that maybe she knows what a treasure Jessica was sitting on and what Jessica is, what she's doing, or maybe she's also in on it, or she has no idea and Jessica is also protecting Bryce. So many options, I cannot wait to find out. So her brother is Special Boy. Sorry, I don't know what it's called, Starborn or something like that. So, but he's the chosen special Fae boy. He's gonna be Prince, He cannot summon magic. And his dad also has dwindling power. And it seems like it's this generational pandemic. Each generation down, they get further and further where they just are losing their magic. And it's just not as potent. Until we finally learn what Bryce is. That she is the chosen special starborn child, and she didn't discover that until she made the drop. And the drop is really interesting. I will get to that in just a second. Oh no, she did discover it. She discovered it when she was a little girl, and they've been hiding it. Her and her parents, her mom and her stepdad, are the only ones who knew about it, and they've been hiding it ever since. But of course, she decides that if she goes ahead and embraces what she really is, she could save the city. And so she's just like, sorry, I'm gonna have to let it go. So she makes the drop and shows her true self to everyone. And I love everyone who was at I think it was like a summit meeting, watching this whole thing on TV as it was going, because Bryce was streaming it to Jessica's phone and she was like sharing with everybody. So that was so cool. Great use of technology in fantasy, just saying. But everyone's just like sitting around watching this whole fucking thing happen. And I love the reaction from her dad and her brother. I kind of feel bad for her brother, but I think, is it in the epilogue? I can't remember, but they do have a follow-up discussion regarding why she didn't tell her brother. He was like, I wouldn't have cared who you were. I still love you, despite having, falling out. And I'm just like, oh, I love it. I wouldn't know. It could go either way, that maybe he would decide to kill her because he'd be too desperate for his position. And once cat's out of the bag, I guess you just kind of have to accept it. But the look on her dad's face was epic. Stick it to him because he is an ass. So I cannot wait again to see what this means for her relationship with her dad and everybody, all of her friends, and what kind of people are going to come out of the woodworks because of this. What does this mean for her? What does it mean that she carries this power? We know it's something big and significant, but what does it really mean? What does it do for her? So I really like Sarah J. Maas's explanation. Not explanation in a way. This is something I've always wondered. They are immortal and they seem to be children and just slow up the age as they get older. So once they reach a certain age, they pretty much age so slowly that they don't age at all, which I think that's how it was explained in A Court of Thorns and Roses series. But in this series, it's it doesn't matter what species you are, angel, fae, werewolf, everyone has to make the drop. And it's like a rite of passage. It can go either way. Either you can either access your power and then you have to, once you drop, you have to make it back up, or you die. If you can make the drop and come back up, then you, I guess, stop aging and you can access your true potential with your power. You're stronger after that and everything else. So anyways, I really like this whole concept of how they have to make the drop. And again, everyone's equal. No matter what species you are, you have to go through this rite of passage. So I know that there's going to be so much more character development in the next group like books. It wasn't until like the very end, but like when Bryce decides to, which also is really cool that she had that scar, she finally lets go of some of her sorrow. She decides to get her leg healed. She kind of was forced into it just because whatever was like stuck in her leg, why it wouldn't just heal normally, because she's supposed to be able to do that as a fae, so they never really understood why her leg didn't heal, so it would give her a lot of pain and stuff like that. So she finally kind of gets pushed into it, but it also is the first step in healing from her past, which is so beautiful. I loved it. I also really like her reason for not getting it healed, because it was like a reminder, like her scar and her pain was the physical reminder of what happened, because she never wants to forget like what happened to her best friends, and that was like her family, you know. Something else I really loved was how their normal lives were written. Like they do basic mundane things, like they watch TV, they joke around, they cook, they eat they watch a popular sport called Sunball, they wear freaking baseball caps. Like Bryce has a collection of childhood toys she keeps in her closet. Like all the little details are so good, and it's so amazing that Sarah J. Maas took the time to include those little things. There's no better way to get a deep connection and relatability to your favorite character than to feel like they just bum around like you do. Like they just chill in between plotting and scheming and saving the world and going on missions and doing research. Like there are downtimes when they're still just trying to like think about stuff or figure out what to do or like recoup from their injuries, and in the meantime, why not just watch the game, you know? In most stories, they just kind of gloss over those parts or just skip them completely ahead. So I really liked those moments. I also really liked how Bryce and Hunt had this thing where they would like take silly pictures. Like Hunt is so serious and Bryce like brings some humor into him and some playfulness into him, and she starts this whole trend of like taking selfies. And so she also, what else does she do? Oh, she keeps going into his phone and changing her contact name, and like some of the things she comes up with are so funny. And it was just all around just like so cute. Bryce has the coolest pet ever. Syrinx? I do not know how to say that name. Syrinx is a chimera. The only chimera I'm familiar with is the giant monster from Final Fantasy. When I used to play Final Fantasy, there was this one big boss that we had to fight. And so in my experience, chimeras are like these scary, enormous, beastly creatures. Not a cute, fluffy companion, but just in regular like lore history, I don't really know what a chimera is or what their special beastly powers are. But I really liked Hunt's reaction to Syrinx. I'm gonna trip over it every single time. I really liked Hunt's reaction to Syrinx. I'm actually going to look up how to say it right now. Syrinx. That's how you say it. There's actually meaning for it too. What does it mean? Definition: vocal organ of birds that is special modification for the lower part of the trachea or the bronchi or both. Also, late Latin from Greek is panpipe. What is a panpipe? A wind instrument. Maybe it just sounded really cool and exotic and it has nothing to do with its definition. Anyways, Syrinx. I really liked Hunt's reaction to Syrinx. He was wondering if Bryce even knew what a chimera can do. I guess they're really good messengers or something. Honestly, I completely forgot. I just remember that Hunt was like, a chimera for real? Like he's almost kind of afraid of it, but then Syrinx is like, hey, like let's be friends. He's like, he finally gets like used to the fact that she's got a chimera, but he almost was like a little bit like shocked and taken back by it. And we don't really have the full story of like what Syrinx's capabilities are. Hunt was wondering if Bryce knew about it, or I think he eventually just chalked it up to the mystery that is Bryce. So that is a question. I don't know. Does she know or not? I kind of feel like she really doesn't know. Syrinx was originally Jessiba's. And the way that it's told is that Jessiba just didn't want him anymore. So Bryce took him off her hands. But also she owes Jessiba a debt. I guess she pays her debts in time in working for her at the library. So I'm so confused in regards to their relationship. But if I'm right about Jessica being kind of a guardian and looking after her, it might be a pretense and like a way to make sure that Bryce doesn't run off or maybe part of some deal. And if Syrinx is like able to escape the apartment whenever he wants and kind of like be a messenger, maybe Syrinx is reporting to Jessica about her whereabouts, because it does also seem a little bit ooky that Jessica kind of always knows what's going on. So maybe it's no coincidence that the Chimera needed a new home. Either way, Bryce just loves Syrinx so much. It's her baby, it's her companion, and her pet. Now, in regards to the cat being able to get out, I would have thought that that was impossible, that this cat definitely has some sort of superpower, until I met my cat. My cat's name is Gwen, and she can open doors, and she regularly does it. I think the only door she can't get through is my son Aaron's door, and that's because the handle really sticks. But we have like the little handles, like she gets all the way up there and grabs it and pulls it down, and she can get out of any room. So we literally, like if we need her, like if we're doing work and we have the doors open, we have to like put her in the room and lock the door because she'll get out. Anyways, this just made me really consider literary pets. Like most of us all have pets. And if you're like me, you're on your way to making a zoo. I have several pets. I have dogs and I have a cat, and then both my kids have their pets. We have a gecko, and my other son this Christmas, like that was the only thing he wanted. We tried talking him out of it, but it was a no-go. He wanted a pet to take care of and love that was just his. So we had to get him Joe Bills. So yeah, we have lots of pets. But there is not enough characters who have pets. And especially in fantasy, because there is so much potential to add really fun magical pets. Another character that I have to mention is Lea Haba. I think that's how you say it, but what does she go as? She goes as Lily for short. But Lea Haba is a fire sprite who guards and quells the unsettled magical books in the magical library. This is so reminiscent of a book I recently read a few months ago. What is it called? Sorcery of Thorns. Like that was my favorite part of that book, was probably the magical library that's brought into this book. This magical library is really cool. Like the books get unsettled, and it's Lea Haba's job to be like, calm down. And it's so cool. I love it. And I just can't get over again how many different magical creatures are given a voice in this book. Like now we also have a fire sprite, and she is just so stinking cute. I love her. And when we first meet her, Bryce seems almost irritated by her because she just talk, and Jessica doesn't want any talking down there because Lea Haba has a job to do. And she's also kind of a slave, which is kind of sad. But then later on, especially when Hunt comes into picture, you can see how close Bryce and Lea Haba really are. They seem to probably end up spending a lot of time together when she's down there doing a lot of studying. And also, that's made me so mad. And I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you have seen it, so you know what I'm talking about, or I'm about to say, is that I cannot believe that Sarah J. Maas killed her off. That's like not even fair. How can you do that? I also thought there for a minute it was touch and go if Syrinx was gonna die, and I was gonna throw the book, but thankfully Syrinx did make it. Anyways, I guess that's all the big points that I really wanted to talk about. I obviously love this book. I cannot wait till the next book comes out, but please go ahead and share some of your favorite moments or your favorite characters or like anything. I would love to hear what your thoughts were on it. Thank you so much for watching. See you later. Bye.